Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Justa's Conversation, right here on Usala Radio, with your host, Brian O'Neill and Luis Gonzalez.
Hello, welcome once again to Justice Conversations, Ivory Tower to the Street. Dr. Brian O'Neill, Luis Suave Gonzalez, and some guests here in the studio too. Dr. August Terrier is with us today, as well as some folks from the Center for Carceral Community. We're going to talk about some reentry and some trauma facing those coming out of prison. That's Noam and Amike from that facility or that particular institution. We're going to also hear from some people calling in today from Phoenix, SCI Phoenix. We'll become a little bit later on in the broadcast. So first of all, let's introduce you two ladies. Amike, first of all, maybe give a little introduction on what your organization does and how you got involved with it.
Sure. So the Center for Carceral Communities, we are a reentry organization, but we're for anybody who's kind of justice involved. So we're very intentionally low barrier. So anybody who's ever, justice involved can be involved with us and get our services. So that's from people who have, been arrested once to people who've served over 30 years. And we're kind of everything reentry. So if people need help with court support, probation and parole support, we do therapy. So that's one beautiful thing that we have is free therapy. We don't bill insurance. We're not kind of in the insurance cash cow going on in Philadelphia with therapy. So we do group and individual therapy and case management as well. Noam and I both hold down the case management, and basically everybody involved with us can get therapy and the services that they need outside because, we can't always just fix our problems in a group. We need to have support outside of that as well.
So do you first initiate contact with somebody while they're still incarcerated, or does it start after they get out?
So because we're low barrier, it totally depends. If people want to contact us when they're inside because they heard from somebody else, which often happens, then they can. But a lot of times we get people once they're already out, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes somebody's like, my cousin is inside and needs some support, and, they could really use you. And then other times we have people like public defenders will call and be like, my person just got out a week ago and they need some services. It's really any way they get to us. As long as you get to us, you can receive services.
And how long has your organization been around?
Since about 2014, so we're pretty new. And Noam and I are the only staff people, so it's a small organization, which is a beautiful thing because we can really do everything kind of case-by-case basis and really, really, give the services the way we want to do it rather than having to, hit a bunch of numbers and it's all, kind of all about, quantity, not quality.
I'm sorry, and what is the, what would you estimate your caseload to be?
So that's the other thing, it depends, that's
Right.
our answer for a lot of things,
Right.
but sometimes we see 7 to 10 people on a weekly basis, and sometimes it's 40. People self-select to be there. We don't force people to come. You don't get discharged for missing or anything like that because that's just not a realistic thing to be doing for people, especially people who, are just coming home and have a lot of responsibilities. So it totally depends, and I guess probably since we started over the past couple of years, it's maybe about 300 people or so that we've touched in one way or another.
Interesting.
I was going to say, can people walk in, or do you do it by appointment only?
People can walk in, so we have group therapy every Wednesday at 5:30 and every Thursday at 1:30 p.m., and those are walk-in times. People can just show up at that time and get started that way.
And if someone were incarcerated and, somehow connected with you and wanted your services, what kinds of things would you be offering?
Well, it really depends. So sometimes the things that we can do is either, they need to know the resources that are around, and sometimes they're not coming back to Philly and they want us to support them with that. We can do that. Sometimes they need a letter to say that they will be eligible for our services and that can help their case. We will do that. But as long as people are not out, there's only so much that we can do because we can't really talk about things while they're on the inside since there's no confidentiality either on the phones or in visiting rooms. So we usually have to wait for them to be outside so that we can start working.
Mm-hmm.
So how did Amike, ask you first, how did you get interested in this particular population and this particular service?
So I went to school for social work, and I kind of didn't know where it was going. I come from a long line of people that have assisted and supported and also been inside themselves. And it was kind of just like a natural thing, I feel like, that ended up happening. I started kind of working in homelessness population, but I was always working with people with records, specifically like in the homeless population. And then from there, when I went and got my master's in social work, this is the internship that I landed in. And it was kind of by chance or, the universe or whatever it was. And then from there, after I graduated, I continued at this organization.
I see. And Noam, how about you?
So my story is a little different. I moved to the U.S. 7 years ago, but to Philly 5 years ago. And when I moved to Philly, I started volunteering at Books Through Bars. At the time, I was not able to work legally in the U.S., so I volunteered full-time for like 8 months maybe, and I was then part of the collective of Books Through Bars. And then I started being involved with CADB, and met a lot of people who were really important in my life.
Let's say what Books Through Bars does and what
Sure.
Cabby does.
Books Through Bars is a volunteer-run organization that sends free books to people who are incarcerated on the East Coast. And CADB is a coalition to abolish death by incarceration, and they've existed since 2015 and pushing for parole eligibility for all lifers in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
So then when you two, were you friends first and then you got started with this, or how did that work?
Well, the next chapter of my story is that I worked in the courts. I was the coordinator of the mentor program, and that's how
And
I
say
met.
what that is.
The mentor program was a program for youth under the age of 30, and they were paired up with a mentor if they wanted to, and if they did what they had to do, meet with their mentor every month, then they would get credit. After 12 months, they would be graduating from the program, and their probation would be cut in half. And it's a program that was the idea of Judge Lisa Rao, and it was started maybe in 2014, 15. So before Krasner was elected, and at a time where this idea was pretty revolutionary for Philadelphia.
And Larry Krasner is the current DA in Philadelphia.
Yes. And Annika actually did part of her internship at the mentor program and was there before I started working there. And she actually interviewed me for my position at the mentor program, and that's how we met.
Yep.
Interesting.
And then Noam got hired and was at mentor for a while, and then some things happened and we ended up together. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
And then how is the kind of brainchild of the Center for Carceral Communities? How did that, were you just talking one day and decided, or?
Well, the center is actually not our brainchild. Dr. T.J. Ghosh and Allison Neff were both academics, envisioned the center and started the center.
What university?
So T.J. Ghosh works at the University of Pennsylvania, and Allison Neff is at Westchester, and they're both social workers. And they really envisioned the center, and they're also full-time academics. So that means that we get to be the full-time staff of the center.
Nice.
Now, how many institutions have you reached out to as far as prisons?
Well, we usually don't reach out to the prisons.
Okay.
It's usually that people reach out to us.
Right.
Because of our different works, I know a lot of lifers in a bunch of different prisons in Pennsylvania. Annika has done more work with the jails. So we have like people from different universes who find us usually.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and when you you work, do this every day, right? I mean, this is what you do, right?
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about the kinds of challenges that people in reentry have, both just like physical challenges like housing or things like that, but also emotional or psychic challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of the concrete, challenges, of course, of housing and stable employment and gainful employment and all those things that we talk about constantly and, in Philadelphia in general, but especially for this population because of the stigma. Of course, all of those things, every single one that people think about is often a challenge for most people. In terms of like,
including going to university, right?
yeah. And so, Noam and I also spent some time working at CCP, at their former reentry support project. And so we were also...
And that's the Community College of
Philadelphia. Yep.
Yes.
And so we also had worked in that arena as well, helping people get back into school after coming home. So yeah, definitely a challenge of getting in and staying in and, kind of navigating the myths around it. Because, people with felonies, it can absolutely get financial aid. They can absolutely go to school, but people don't know it. And it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, I don't think I can go to school, and then nobody ever does it. So we've definitely done that as well. And it's definitely a challenge because a lot of people want to go and, get an education so they can receive gainful employment. I would say psychologically, another huge question, of course. And I guess we'll get into it a little bit later as well, but I would say a lot of effects of past traumatic experiences, they affect everything. Symptoms of trauma can be very similar to symptoms that land you another type of diagnosis, and people coming home have a huge stigma around mental health as well. Mental health in the jails and in the prisons is not by any means something that's supportive and healing. And if that's kind of the only way that you see it or envision, that's how you understand mental health to be, getting out and being like, yeah, I'm going to go to therapy, like that's a hard thing. And it's understandable because people have been through a lot of really, really bad, services.
Yeah. And I think that one of the big things that we've been seeing a lot, especially with people who have been coming home after longer periods of time, is what I usually talk about as culture shock, where everything is so new that even physically their bodies have to adapt to the food. They have to adapt to sleeping on a real bed. They have to adapt to not having a light in their face. And all that creates physical symptoms that are pretty serious usually. And it takes a while for people to get used to that. And on top of it, they have to navigate the realities of 2019 in Philadelphia. And everything's different. So relationships, friendships, how to make friends. People don't know how to do all those things, and they have to learn how to do it. And that's pretty serious and hard.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some people who've spent their whole lives in prison.
Yeah.
And that would mean that you would be relearning a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, you're separated from your family.
Mm-hmm.
And you may see them in the visiting room, but that's different than when you're actually here, right? And you can see them anytime.
Yeah.
So that very idea of being separated from family, that's incredibly traumatic. But it also, one of the things that prison does is it fractures families, right? And can you talk more about the effects of that?
Yeah, I think that we all know it. For those of us who have people that we love who are incarcerated, you can't have a relationship 15 minutes at a time on a phone, right? And you can't have a relationship with people that you see in a visiting room where you don't want to talk about the hard things sometimes because you only have so many hours. And so communication is mitigated through the carceral state. That's what happens. And that changes what a relationship is. And when people come home, the relationships are different because suddenly those barriers are not quite there, or they're still there because sometimes there's parole looming over somebody's head and people are going to play with that, family members included. So once the carceral state is involved into your relationships, it changes everything and it breaks it.
With that, we got to go on a commercial break. You're listening to a Justice Conversation on Osala Radio.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, and she convinced me to continue my education. No one receives a diploma alone. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back. This is Conversations from the Ivory Tower of the Street with Dr. Brian O'Neill, Dr. August Terrier, and also our guest from the Center for Carceral Community. We have Noam and Amike, and we're now joined from Phoenix, SCI Phoenix.
With Mr. Freddie Rodriguez.
It was on the line right now.
The current president of LaSalle. Freddie, welcome to the show, Freddie.
Hey, Freddie.
And we're talking about the program that you currently running in under LaSalle. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
We hooked up with UPenn with the Center of Carceral Community, and we noticed that everybody in here have different style of helping the men here. And one of the things we knew was we deal with a lot of trauma, but we never deal with the trauma. And we noticed because of that, a lot of guys was coming back or just repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So we figured what better way to better a man is to better his situation that can bring him back in. So we hooked up with Amike and Noam, which is a trauma class.
So how many people are participating in the trauma class?
Well, we originally started with 20. Right now, I believe we at 16, 17. Because a lot of men kept going home, so we had no choice but to let them go.
So have you seen it different in the man that's taking part in that class from the time it started to now?
Yes. We were just speaking about the other day. I have two gentlemen that either don't like to speak or don't participate, and they show amazing improvement. Including myself, I find myself dealing with situations I didn't even think about for 10, 20 years. And facing these situations has lightened the load, so to speak.
So what kind of situations you talking about? What is your day like? What is your because we on the radio, so people need to understand what is your traumatic day like in SCI Phoenix? Take us to one day, quick.
So, the first thing we deal with is someone controlling our movement. When we see old periods, and a lot of us set a schedule for the day. We have time schedules. So when you have someone controlling our time,
SCI Phoenix State Correctional Institution. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
You have someone controlling your time, and it throws your whole schedule off. Like right now, I'm supposed to go here with a clock. I have to wait till 1:15. I'm on somebody else's time. That we have plans. So like if I get up, I go to breakfast, and I go to school. After school, I know I gotta take care of some work for the organization. At 1 o'clock, I'm going to work, take care of work. At 3 o'clock, 3:30, I'm back. 5:30, I'm out again. Taking care of some work on my night job. So if anything, if we come out late or the schedules throw off 15, 20 minutes, it just throw our whole day off.
Any questions?
Hey, Freddie, it's August.
Hey, August, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Haven't spoken to you in a while.
I know. Well, I would love to know what you more about what you were just talking about. You found yourself dealing with some situations you hadn't really thought about for 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, so, for us who, for the matter of put in this sense, is that when you go on the street, you deal with certain things, you don't think nothing of it, it's just another day. And as we started class, we started going over these traumatic, like, seeing somebody killed at a young age or being in a rumble, fighting with so many people, gang grumbles and all that. It's just another day to us. But we didn't realize how
For sure.
SCI Phoenix State Correctional Institution. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
It's not normal that you have no officers constantly harassing just because of the way I dress or look or act or the neighborhood I live in. And for us, it's normal, but when you speak to others, they never really dealt with that. You know, that's an everyday thing for us. You know, or getting in a rumble with the neighborhood across, you know, around the way. They'll rumble each other. That's normal.
Mm.
But when you speak to someone else who never experienced that, they're like, that's not normal. So we started attacking that. The things that we thought was normal wasn't really normal. It just grew up in it, so we got used to it.
So would you say that having this class in SCI Phoenix is changing the culture of how people see themselves and how people are dealing with the situation and preparing to come home and make a difference?
Most definitely, because right now what we realize is that we had definition, but we didn't have the label to connect to the definition. So now we understand the name and the definition of the traumas and the things that we were dealing with, you know, and not only that, but we started to have conversation beyond the class. We started to listen more and catch the moments when, you know, men are either ashamed or put themselves down and they're not thinking that something in their life really was contributed to that is being triggered. You know, so when we start having this conversation and we start looking at it for what it is, not for what we thought it was, we start having these little aha moments, and guys are becoming more comfortable speaking to each other, acknowledging the stuff they went through, their traumas. And man, listen, we have a great conversation. We're making sure, I'm not saying we got everybody, but every one person we ever be able to speak to and share these things has a profound effect. That it's to a point we already got like just the names of people who want to sign up for the next session.
Okay, Noam and Amike are in the studio right here listening to you, Fred. So what would you say to them right now about the class?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the chance with us. Thank you for even considering us and becoming up front because, you know, when you get a partnership and you get people who actually care like they do, the teaching has become different. The conversation, the atmosphere is different. And the message, the sincerity they have and the commitment they have with us, and not just here. They're waiting for them to come out. They're letting them know that you have hope when you come home. You choose to ask for it. You know? So, you know, we try to cut the path off the excuses. Everybody's always making excuses. I don't got no hope. I got no support out there. Yeah, we cutting that. No more excuses. There's somebody out there. You have people out there who's willing to help.
So if you had a chance to talk to the Secretary of Correction, Wessel, and tell him about this trauma class, what would you say?
I would just share my experience. I would tell them, like, you know, you looking to improve the man. You want to send the men good out, you know, better out there. You want a new man. But we always focus on the programs we do or the community service, but we never focus on the man mind. If you really want to complete new man, you got to focus on his mind. You got him to overcome the triggers that can bring him back. But that brought him back the first time because everybody is a repeat offender. You know, so let's focus on this brain. Let's heal the brain and all the traumas that lie dormant before we do anything else.
And how long you been incarcerated, Fred?
Is it over 23 years now?
23 years. And in them 23 years, how many times have you gone to a trauma class given by the DOC?
None.
Okay.
Good point.
This is the first one I'm aware of.
How difficult was it for you ladies to get your foot in the door in Phoenix? Because they've been a little slow to get community things off the ground.
No, it was actually pretty easy, mostly because we're guests of Laseo. So they're the ones who have done all the coordination. And also, you know,
Let's say what Laseo is.
Laseo is a Latin American cultural exchange organization, which is an organization of people who were incarcerated at Greaterford and now we're at Phoenix. And they invited us because they had heard about our work through Suave, actually. And because the Center for Carceral Communities is also attached to the University of Pennsylvania, Phoenix is pretty excited to have, social workers from Penn coming to teach something for free. That's the reality of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Excellent.
So,
And-
Fred, what will you tell the people out here that could really sponsor these programs? How will you convince them that these programs are needed in the DOC? As president of LaSalle, will you recommend this program to be duplicated in other institutions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, like I said, from my benefit, my experience, I had shed a lot of trauma off of me that I kept in me that I didn't realize I had. And I faced them, dealt with them. And that's the less stress and burden because we stressed out as it is, dealing with trying to get our freedom or just trying to make it day to day. And, we're already overwhelmed mentally. So why not unload the burden of all these traumas from your past and just deal with the present and allow yourself to heal and no longer feel guilty or ashamed of what was. Let's deal with what is.
Yes.
So, Freddie, do you feel like you're making a difference as well, helping other fellows deal with some of these issues?
I do. Me and Noam always have this conversation. I find myself using some of the tools they're giving us to speak to, especially like a lot of younger men. We're real adamant to have a relationship with them, not talk down to them, not talk at them, but speak with them and share the knowledge that's been given to us and even our personal experience. Because we're always making excuses that these young bucks are messing things up and this and that, but you have none of us out there to speak to them. By us being incarcerated, we took away the knowledge that was supposed to be passed down to them. So while we got them here, we taken advantage and given the knowledge that we acquired when we was younger from our elders. I believe we have a tremendous effect.
Sure.
So I got one last question, Fred. I just want to apologize to you for traumatizing you for 20 years. I know it was real traumatic, me dealing with me, but on the real, man, I'm proud of you. I hope you continue the work you're doing in there. We got your back out here, and we got our eyes on you, Fred. So now you got a bunch of people listening to you. You better walk that walk because sometimes we go get the benefit from one program, but quickly forget. Don't forget that Amike and Noam going up there because they care about y'all guys. So that means that when y'all come out and when any of them guys in the class come out, the right thing to do is pay it forward by coming back and participating in the center.
You know what? And that's been our motto as a LaSalle organization that we no longer trying to just take things for the moment. We try to create things that's going to last. And every man, like I told them, I'm holding them accountable. What I want back is that they pass that helping hand they get it from us.
Yes.
What we do for them, they need to do somebody else. Right now, I can honestly say by December, 22 of our members be home. And within this year alone.
Yes.
So, amazing things are happening. We got a lot of good men coming out, and we're hoping to continue to work out there.
You have 1 minute left.
Them experience what we've done in here, and we send out some good men to do some good work by the end of December.
Freddie, we love you, and I've hold in my heart your courage and integrity that I remember from years ago with our classes together.
I appreciate the opportunity, and for those listening, there's more to us than just the number or just the stigma of being prisoners. We try to do good work. We try to send good men out there to do better work.
And y'all listening?
Yes, it's just an opportunity.
Y'all listening to Freddie Rodriguez from SCI Phoenix, president of LaSalle, and y'all listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio.
Thanks for calling in, Freddie.
Love you, Freddie. Get your
See
homework
you
done.
Monday.
Bye.
Be good.
In the 11th grade, nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education. Just never judges. She's a true role model.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you, Maria, for being a friend and a beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Okay, welcome back to Justice Conversations from the Ivory Tower of the Street. Dr. Brian O'Neill, Luis Suave Gonzalez, Dr. August Terrier, and a couple of folks from the Center for Carceral Community, that is Noam and Amike, are here with us today. And we're just joined right now from SCI Phoenix with another caller, and we're talking to Freddie.
No, we talking.
Oh, sorry, Eddie. Sorry, Eddie.
Ramirez.
I get my Freddies and Eddies mixed up.
Oh.
Eddie's called in to give us some feedback. He's another person involved with the program.
So, Eddie, welcome to the show, Eddie.
Thanks for having me.
And we just finished talking to Freddie about the trauma class y'all having there. You know, briefly, before you get into your education over incarceration scholarship spill that you want to talk about, how's the trauma class been going on in there for you?
Well, the trauma class, I'm really thankful that I'm first of all thankful to you to introduce me to Noam and Amike at the center and giving us the opportunity to bring that class up here because I think it's something that's needed. So far, you know, I'm a guy who I reserve my judgment because it's too early for me to tell. It's only been these 9 sessions, 10 sessions, something like that. But guys are giving me good feedback. I like the relationship that we're developing. Thankfully, you know, I can be a little bit sometimes paranoid, and thankfully, Amike and Noam are giving me space to kind of like let out those ideas sometimes and then rein me back in. I'm very comfortable with them, and I'm very hopeful to what comes out of this class in the immediate future and down the line.
So we know that LaSalle is do a multitude of things in there. What are one of the things that LaSalle do that you want to speak about today?
Well, LaSalle is trying to tend to the Hispanic community here and the general population. One of the things that we're most proud of that we've done.
The call from SCI Phoenix State Correctional Institution. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
I'm sure by now you're used to that interruption.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we are.
We have since 2008 we have sponsored and funded a scholarship that benefits high school seniors in the Bethlehem area school district and in Philadelphia.
And how many scholarships has y'all awarded today?
Oh, to date, I don't have an exact number, but I'm proud to say that it's close to 100.
Wow.
Impressive.
Yeah. I mean, when we started off with the Bethlehem area school district, we were giving out, I think, 4 a year. But very quickly, we started in 2008, and I think by 2010, we had partnered up with former state representative Ron Waters, and we got into the Philadelphia school district. And we went from 4 to about 6 every year. There was a peak. There was a peak where got to about 7 or 8 a year. Now we're down to about 6 a year. So it's great to be doing that. It's great to be not only, and we just actually, speaking of the center, we just entered into a partnership with them to sponsor returning citizens for with the scholarships so that they can get whatever they need. I mean, the scholarship isn't a treasure, it isn't a fortune, but it does cover the cost of maybe school supplies or a trans pass to get on the bus. All of those things that, for real, it may seem small, but they can be barriers to people getting an education.
And how do La Salle raise the money to award these scholarships?
So La Salle, for the first 10 years of the scholarship, La Salle has a fundraiser. 4 times a week, we sell ice cream to the general population. We take.
This is a call from SCI Phoenix State Correctional Institution. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
We take a portion of the proceeds from that to fund the scholarship. But for the first 10 years, and this speaks to just the general good nature of the population, is we would go around and solicit donations. And guys would give $1, $2. We have a few guys who have given over $100 to the scholarship.
Wow.
And that would supplement our fundraiser. It isn't until we got here to Phoenix where the administration said, hey, look, you guys, you're supposed to be getting all your money from the fundraiser and not necessarily from an extracurricular fund drive like that.
Wait, well, to put that in perspective, how much does somebody inside make an hour top wage, Eddie?
Listen, we have guys who don't have jobs.
Right.
And they're in what's called like the general labor pool. And so they get 17 cents an hour for 4 hours a day, maximum.
Wow.
So that's 68 cents a day that they get. And you have those guys who would donate something just because they believe in it, because these scholarships are going to students who come from their community. And it's a great feeling to be connected to the community in that way.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the school supplies program you have.
So in 2000, I want to say, and Suave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, about 2012, we partnered up with the local chapter of the NAACP and with former state representative Dr. started to buy school supplies for kids. And we have been doing that ever since as well.
Go ahead, Eddie.
So that's something that we do approximately every other month. We target schools throughout Philly and West Philly and North Philly and West Philly middle schools and elementary schools because those teachers are the ones who need it the most. It's horrible to think of a class, and I'm one of those students who went to one of the poorest schools in the city, and so I remember what it was like to have textbooks that didn't have covers or there were pages torn out and for a teacher to come in with pencils and rulers and erasers and just think that kids that didn't have book bags, these teachers to be able to provide them with book bags, just a beautiful thing that we really felt.
Okay, because just last week we took the supplies to one of the schools in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I did hear about that. I haven't gotten it. I think I asked Freddie for an email on that so that I could have that information because I like to sort of chronicle that.
There's a photo book coming your way, Eddie.
I appreciate that. Who is that?
Noam.
But one of my questions to you is, how many times a year are y'all planning to distribute supplies in Philadelphia?
So previously, up until the transfer from Greaterford to Phoenix, we were doing it about 10 times a year. Coming over to Phoenix, there's been sort of an interruption. In our yearly plan of action, we have committed to 6 times a year, so every other month.
Every other month?
Every other month.
Okay. So are you planning to doing that with the center? Is the center going to be like the prime location to distribute these supplies? I think they should, because most of the schools that they select are school in needs, are school that most of the children have parents incarcerated, and I think that's what the program was created for. And the beauty of it is that instead of y'all buying a whole bunch of supplies, that asks the after school program what do they need, and they get to get what they really need, and not stuff that we just think they need that's gonna be sitting around. So that's the beauty of it. So, what else you want to tell us about that program, Eddie?
Okay, so wait a minute. Are you breaking news? Noam, are we making a partnership? Are we making a commitment to fully provide for the school supply project?
I was not aware of it until right now, Eddie, but apparently Suave has made that decision for us.
Well, listen, I'll let you down. If the center was to make that commitment to LaSalle, then LaSalle will 100%.
All right, let's talk about it on Monday when we come to Phoenix.
Yes. So now you have something on the agenda for Monday, but I really believe that that should be the call, because the way we was doing it, it was like we used to buy supplies that we think the school needs, and sometimes we in there we looked at these catalogs and we picked stuff that we wish we would have as kids.
Let me give a little shout out to the center, right? Because I had a conversation with Noam and Amike.
Oh, let me correct you, Eddie. They get a big shout out, not a little shout out.
Well, okay, well, let me give them an appropriately sized shout out. They said something to me that I really like. They're one-stop shopping for reentry services, and I like that. And maybe part of reentry is pre-entry. And so if we start supplying them with whatever funds that we can to provide these school supplies, we won't even have to talk about reentry in the future. And if I'm not speaking out of turn, I'm sure that Noam and Amike are with me on that.
Well, let's ask them. Are you?
About?
What he just said.
We with you, Eddie.
Yeah.
We with you.
Yeah.
But at the same.
Absolutely.
From my point of view, I would rather have like sort of one person handling all of the details than have it sort of split up between this person and that person. I like to know what I'm doing, who I'm doing it with.
What I will say, it was beautiful to bring those supplies last week, and it was an after school program that I used to work at for about 5 years. So going back and bringing it to them was a nice experience.
Remember, please send pictures to Tom so we can see them here.
They
They
will.
coming in a photo book to you. Come on, we already talked about this.
And you know what else is beautiful, Eddie?
That's right.
You know what else is beautiful, and this is coming from me, so that means a lot. That y'all decided to give a scholarship to a returning citizen. That is, I think that's major, man, because a lot of these brothers are trying to do good, but circumstances and the lack of funds sometimes keep us out. So by y'all doing that, man, y'all helping the brother achieve his dream by getting his education, bro. And I want to thank you for that, because I know the brother too. So,
And no need to thank me. And let me tell you, I don't know who sent us the essay that he wrote, but from reading his essay, I can tell, man, this was a guy who, if people support, because I really believe that what people need is support. And sometimes people fall off because they don't feel like they have the support. And from reading that essay, I was like, oh, this is a dude, man, who has been through some stuff. And truly, if he can feel the love coming from in here out there, and then having the support of the center, all those things combined, I mean, this guy's like in the succeed, man. It's hard for me to imagine failure.
Doc, any questions, Doc?
No questions.
Any questions?
Eddie, yeah, like I hear you talking about reading the guy's essay, and I just want to say that when I hear that, it makes me think, just makes me want to give my thoughts to you about what a remarkable essayist you are.
Oh, thank you.
The deep intelligence and the passion that you put into your writing is remarkable.
I appreciate that. And part of that is I have learned under the tutelage of Professor August Harriet.
I had nothing to do with it, man. It was all you. Yeah. I still remember that stuff, Eddie, really powerfully.
Well, there's going to be more stuff coming.
I bet.
And I'm hoping to make it very public pretty soon.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
So Eddie, we hope that you invite Usala up there for a live recording, if you could make it happen.
That'd be great.
We would definitely want to go now that we got our press credentials.
I'll put the onus on you. Open up a
I'm gonna see if Noam show me how to do that. but listen, Eddie, man, we want to thank you and the guys in La Salle, man, for doing the work that y'all doing. There's a whole bunch of people hearing this, man, and y'all making it different.
All right, Eddie. Thanks for calling in, Eddie.
Eddie, bye.
Bye. See you Monday.
Real quick, just Swap, just so you know, man, the guys up here are mad proud of you, man. Like, everybody talks about you, and everybody asks about you all the time, and they really hear about the good work you're doing, especially on the radio, and you and all the other brothers that have gone home, man. Keep up the good work out there, y'all.
Yo, we hope to see you soon out here, have you in the studio live. I won the first interview, too.
Exclusive.
Nobody else.
Exclusive.
So long, Eddie.
We got to go on a commercial break. Y'all just listened to Eddie Ramirez from SCI Phoenix, an innocent man. Hopefully we'll be home soon. Y'all listening to a Justice Conversation on Osala Radio.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends.
(150/90).
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
All right, welcome back to Justice Conversation from the Ivory Tower to the Street. Dr. Brian O'Neill, Luis Suave Gonzalez, Dr. August Terrier, and the Center for, I'll get this right eventually, Carceral Community. And that's with Noam and Amike are with us today talking about some struggles of people coming out and also working with folks that are inside with trauma, and which is the important first step before anybody hits that front door. Absolutely. And I was impressed too because your program allows these guys to take what they've learned and help mentor and even probably talk other guys into the idea of trying this that maybe otherwise would not. It's sort of a way of giving their blessing to it and their endorsement. And I think that's huge because then more people get involved. Yeah. So you get some influential guys to see that it's really something positive, and then, some other guys follow that. That's an awesome. And then it sort of takes off from that.
Yeah, and I want to credit this model to David Lee Daoud, who's a very close person to me, who's a lifer at SCI Cole Township. And this whole program and the way we designed it came from me talking about the trauma classes that I was taking to Daoud on the phone, and him learning about trauma through that. And as I was teaching him about trauma and sharing books with him, that was life-changing for him, and he continued his healing journey, and he shared that with other younger lifers at Cole Township. And it's because of him that we decided to create the program the way we did. And I think that, he can't be around the table with us, but he's definitely the reason why we're doing that.
Well, we would like him to call in the show one day and feature him from SCI Cole Township. I think it's important that we give credit to the people inside that's doing this work that you probably won't hear of. And he do a lot of work other than just the trauma and Class is in there, so we need him to call the show. Can you set that up?
Yes, boss.
And also, one question: are there any plan to help the guys in SCI Phoenix, like become facilitators or for the program? Because I think that this is something that they could use upon release to gain employment. Because most jobs in the city now, you have to be trauma informed if you're working around social work and community work. So.
Yeah. So the class right now certifies everybody to be a trauma-aware community peer. And that's a certification from the Center for Carceral Communities at the University of Pennsylvania.
That's great.
And so everybody gets that. But what I hear in your question is a different question too, of like, do we have a plan of doing a train-the-trainer?
Yes.
Yeah. So Annika and I think about it a lot, and the reality is right now the class, the way we've designed it, is like we take one day off every 2 weeks to go to Phoenix. And we just have integrated that as part of our routine. But there's only 2 of us, and there's only so much time. So we can only teach really 15, 17 people at a time. So we do want to do that, a train-to-trainer program. I think that the question is getting funding for that, and that's something that we've been trying to do.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, just having heard from the 2 guys at SCI Phoenix who just called in, it strikes me, it reminds me, rather, that one of the big challenges when we're talking about reentry is the incredible stigma that so many here have about those who are incarcerated or are formerly incarcerated. And what one finds when one goes into the prisons or when one lives in prison, however that works, in whatever time period, is that there are tremendous numbers of people locked up who have incredible resources, talent, skills, but also incredible integrity, incredible courage, bravery, and that so many folks in prison, like the 2 that we just heard from, are deeply, deeply interested in finding ways to pay it forward, to have an influence on others, to, as you heard both of these guys keep saying, to help out those who are coming along, to be mentors, to connect with others, to have a lasting positive effect, right? And that I think it's so important to always remember that when people come out and there are all these stigmas and barriers that are put before them, that in fact these are people who are like any other people, that they want what everyone else wants, that they have the same capabilities, talents, skills, and they have the deepest love like any other person, that being incarcerated does not change you as a human in ways that would prevent any of that from happening, but it puts all these barriers up to you, and one of them is trauma. And I think I taught a class in intergenerational trauma, ancestral trauma in SCI Greaterford. And this idea of, and I wonder if you could maybe talk more about how this maybe works in your class, of how trauma is something that comes down through generations. And, we see these particular folks sitting in prison now for X number of years at this age, right? But they had parents, and those people had parents, and those people had parents. And it may be that there's a long history of trauma that's going on in a lineage, right? And that it just so happens that this is the one person who ends up being incarcerated. And can you talk about that in terms of, does that have a function in your class in any way?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's kind of a natural thing that comes up. We talk in psychology and social work and all those places always about the nature and nurture thing, and it's like the never-ending conversation, but the reality is that nature often comes from somewhere, and that's kind of the idea of the ancestral trauma, is that things are always passed down, and they become realer and realer and realer, and then you're not sure whether that's something that was just innate and, inescapable, or if it was something that was, from environment. But it definitely comes up naturally all the time, and it's definitely something we talk about and, talk a lot about the healing piece, because it's definitely there and it's important, and I think people know it. And you heard Freddie say, like, we knew a lot of these definitions already. Like, people know that, it's not like a foreign concept. But having the words and then also having, the idea that, like, but also there's a ton of healing that can happen here is a huge.
Yeah, and I think that, like, when we're thinking about historical trauma, 90% of the people in our classroom are black men or men of color. And the reality is that being incarcerated comes from the lineage of slavery. So people are very aware of that. They know that being incarcerated is one of the oppressive systems that, exist in the U.S. So I think that we really try to push more than, like, people know about trauma, and the problem is that they often think that they're, that it's a curse and that they cannot escape their destiny. And I personally don't believe that. I really do believe in the healing piece of trauma, and I believe that our brains are magical and that we can actually heal when we know what to do, and that it's goofy, but actually having loving relationships is the first step to healing from trauma. Absolutely. And I think that when we came into the trauma class, people wanted us to tell them that they were doomed. And I think that they were very surprised when we were like, no, you are not, because often that's how the conversations are. And they kept asking, well, at what point is your brain so damaged that you can't heal from trauma? And I don't believe that that's true. I think that there's always a chance for us to heal from trauma.
And part of that is neuroplasticity.
Exactly.
Which goes on throughout life.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that the guys in graduate school are getting a head start before they get out.
Yeah.
They're being taught what trauma is, so when they come out, they don't be so lost like a lot of us were. Well, I still say, like I tell Doc all the time, I still believe that guys coming home from prison, if you serve over 2 years, you need to come home and go to therapy. That should be mandated, but they don't do it. And for guys serving life and long time in prison, you can't even go see a psych in there until the day you're getting out of jail.
Right.
Yeah. So you go for years in the prison, not being able to talk about these type of issues. So I think that having that class in there is helping them guys prepare ahead of time.
That's what Freddie was saying, that he's thinking and talking about things he hasn't talked about in years.
And because it happened to me, I credit these two women here for me being home this time around.
Right.
And learning a little bit about trauma. It has helped me in my job. But yeah, I think that the guys in there, they really appreciate the class. And they're getting ready. They're getting ready because we seen guys that came out with me, they are back in prison because they don't believe they had trauma. We talk about trauma of incarceration for being in jail 30, 40 years. That is a traumatic experience coming back out here, learning this shit here. Oops, man, hope we don't get fined. Learning the phone, delete that. Learning the phones and stuff like that. It could be a traumatic experience.
Well, the other thing, hopelessness is so much reinforced in the system.
Yes.
People are always
and
telling
passivity.
you. Right, and always telling how you're going to fail. Judges, from the time you enter the courtroom, and probation, parole officers threatening you, and very little hopefulness. Everybody almost expecting you to fail.
And even in trauma, in kind of the trauma world and in teaching, oftentimes it is really like a hopeless thing, and people give a lot of that brain stuff and the ACEs and all this past stuff, and then it's like, well, what's moving forward? They forget about that.
Say what ACEs is.
Adverse childhood experiences.
And there's a test, a questionnaire, an ACEs questionnaire that you can take, and it's said that people in prison score I think 4 is, if you score 4, you're considered to have been traumatized, but many people in prison score far higher than that.
Yeah.
Well, in closing, I want to thank y'all for coming to the show, and I want to say this. One of the facilitators in our group always say that the most traumatic experience other than losing a parent is coming home from prison and adopting to this new world.
Wow.
I can't say his name, but He know who he is.
Sure.
Wow.
You listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio. We see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.